In this engaging conversation, James Rutter, Chief Creative Officer of Cook, the award-winning frozen meals and puddings business, shares his unique career journey from journalism to the culinary world. He discusses the growth of Cook, emphasising the importance of steady growth and the joy of building a brand, highlighting the significance of a strong team and company culture, and detailing how Cook fosters a collaborative environment that values its employees. He explores the significance of authenticity in branding and how it relates to business culture, sharing insights into Cook's B-Corp journey and highlighting the shift from purpose to measurable impact with their raw talent program. Finally, he reflects on the future of Cook, focusing on continuous improvement and the importance of trying new things. Enjoy. Today we're joined by James Rutter, Chief Creative Officer of Cook. Welcome, James.
Thank you, Steve. Lovely to be here.
Good. Look, as is a bit of a tradition now with the Swim Against the Tide podcast, what we like to do is to give our listeners a bit of insight into you as an individual, but also the business that you're working for. So give them a bit of background, because we've just been talking, we've got sort of kids of a similar age. They sort of look at us and think, how am I ever going to get into work? How am I going to start? And I think it's everybody's story's been so different. They didn't start where they're finishing now or where they are now. So if you could give us a bit of insight from your story and career, and then let's really focus on Cook and start to talk about that as a business, that'd be fantastic.
Okay, gosh, my career story is, I guess, a bit of an unusual one in many respects, in that I've had two very different careers. Last 15 years at Cook, and the first 15 years as a kind of financial and business journalist and editor. So two very different things.
I hope by the end of the podcast you'll have told us why they're together.
I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to it, to be perfectly honest. It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
I mean, I came out of uni. I did a philosophy degree, which qualifies you for everything and nothing, I guess, and wanted to be a journalist. And the first job I happened into, and back in the day, people still did graduate trainee schemes for journalism, was in a business context. So that was just the way I went, by accident rather than design. But loved it, and writing about anything is great fun. And actually, I always said to people, journalism isn't actually a writing career; it's a people career. You just go out and you meet interesting people, you write down what they say, and it doesn't really matter if you can write or not. All that matters is that you can ask people good questions, write down their answers, and take them back to the office, because somebody else can definitely put it into shape as long as you've got the kernel of a good story there. So I did that. I worked through various kind of very esoteric areas of the financial services industry. Did some time in New York on a .com, right at the peak of the .com boom back in 99, 2000. And then just kind of by chance, the company I was part of, which was a great kind of independent publishing house in the city, it got bought by a much bigger American business called Dow Jones. And Dow Jones, literally about the next week, got bought by News Corp. So I went in the space of about a month from working for this great kind of entrepreneurial independent publishing house with about 80 people in it, to being part of Murdoch's evil empire. Apologies to anybody who happens to be part of Murdoch's evil empire these days. It's big. It could be big. It could be anything.
Yeah. No doubt.
And it was fine, and it was interesting, and suddenly being part of that big corporate universe, you did get an insight into a different world and a different way of working than we'd previously had. But ultimately, I definitely had a strong sense it wasn't quite for me. I couldn't see myself staying and climbing the corporate ladder for the next 20 years, as it were, in a very kind of competitive and political environment that I think most big companies.
Some people thriving, don't they?
Absolutely. Some people love that. That's absolutely what they love. But I had the sense it wasn't for me. And around that time, I'd moved out of London when my second child arrived. We'd moved out into Kent, and we happened to have moved to the same village where Ed, who was the founder of Cook, where he lived. And he had kids a similar age, and we got to know each other socially. And genuinely one night, kind of out the blue, down the pub, he said, do you want to come and work for Cook? And it was like, oh, doing what?
Did you think
exactly?
In kitchens? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm no good response.
Yeah. And he kind of said, well, kind of, communications, isn't that kind of your thing? And it really just went from there. So we obviously chatted, and I came to visit and had to think about it. But because at that time I was just feeling like, look, this corporate world probably isn't for me. It was just one of those opportunities that bubbled up. And I think when they come along, certainly when you're younger, at that stage I would have been, gosh, how old would I have been? Good mid-30s, so I wasn't that young, but still young enough that you feel like you can take a bit of a punt. And so that's what I did, and absolutely no regrets on that. But I would also say, going back, if you like, to my 20s and through my publishing career, I must have had about 6 or 7 different jobs, again, because opportunities bubbled up. And I do think there's the sense of, when you're young in your career, taking the things that arise.
Yeah.
And not always because you've got this well thought out plan that it's going to end up in the destination, but because you can see it's going to be interesting, exciting, stretch you a bit, take you out of your comfort zone, and always in the knowledge that you're young enough to just jack it in and go back to the thing you were doing before if you really want to. So that was definitely, for me, the kind of story of that part of my.
I think I don't want to name drop here, but I was telling you about the event I was at last week, and one of the keynote speakers was Claire Balding, the sports presenter, broadcaster. And I'm a massive fan of her, and she was, obviously she's so polished and so incredible. But I was trying to think, here's a room of 250 sort of business leaders. How's she going to spin this? And it was fascinating. She went through her career, and to your point there, she explained how she seized and made the most of every opportunity she came across. Some she created, some she badgered people. But whenever she got a chance to present a new sport, she said she threw herself into the sport. She became an expert, so that she knew when she was on camera, she was like, people are going, how does Claire know about rowing? How does Claire know about boxing?
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting skill that you realize, where I started and where you started is not, certainly we wouldn't have thought we'd be sitting here on a Wednesday afternoon recording a podcast about our relative businesses. And that's what I think, the fear of someone thinks they have to start a journey knowing where they're going to finish. And I think that's really dull, personally. I think the idea of.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I mean, we were saying earlier, we've got children of a similar age now, kind of coming, about to come out into the world and try and get a job and start a career. And it's tough as a parent, because you obviously want them to succeed and do the things that they love and find confidence early in life. And at the same time, there's that, you've got to let go and just let them kind of go out and explore and do their own thing. But just throwing yourself into stuff, giving it a go and being prepared to be a complete learner at something, but really committed to learning and getting up to speed, not feeling that you have to be the finished article when you walk in the door. I think that's a key.
I think that's key, isn't it? Because they live their lives much more publicly than we ever did, because we'll go back and talk about there being there was no internet when we started, never mind social media.
We're going to go down an old man's rabbit hole here.
We'll get the violins out. But I think what's interesting is they believe with their first job, as a generalization, they have to get it right straight away and be the finished article. And you, like, to your point, you're going to do jobs. Like I had my year out when I was at uni at Boots and loved it. Brilliant place to work. But all I thought was, I don't want to work for a big organization. I want to be in a small, creative, and, like, to your point that you raised that earlier, privately run with an entrepreneurial drive. It's not that was a bad place. I just found out that wasn't for me. And unless you try things, unless our children go out and try things, you're never going to have that as a reference point to know, this is what I was meant to do.
Yeah,
actually.
Absolutely. So where are we? Gosh, so join Cook, I guess.
So
that's been the last 14 years, and it's been genuinely a wonderful journey from, when I arrived, we must have been around 25 million in sales, and this year will be about 125 million. And so when you look at it like that, it looks like, wow, that's huge. But sometimes I think people look at it and think, that's actually, if you're a financial type, an investment type, you say, that's quite slow growth. You could have been, why didn't you? Why aren't you Google or Facebook? And I do think there's a kind of this obsession with overnight growth, with hitting those massive numbers, with selling out at huge multiples to somebody and being the huge star. It completely overshadows the both the value in a bigger sense, I think the value to society, but also the joy and the pleasure of growing something consistently over time that isn't about being a rocket ship that's going from 0 to 100, but it's about that classic kind of compounding growth, doing things slow and steady, but in a way that you are proud of it the whole way through. And you suddenly do get to a point after 15 years that, well, actually, you know what? We've grown quite a lot. I didn't really notice that happening because we were just kind of turning up and doing our thing.
It'd be good to share a couple of numbers, because I don't think people will get, because they may have a shop in their local town or village or whatever. But give us some numbers of the number of retail outlets that you guys have, and then the number of deals that you have, because it's quite incredible.
Yeah. And so Cook as well, for those who don't know, so we kind of do handmade frozen.
Yeah, that's a good point. We should be doing a good sales job here, shouldn't we?
Yeah. So Cook's all about kind of food that's made like you would at home, frozen, and then you take it straight from the freezer, put it in the oven or microwave, so you've got essentially a home cooked meal straight from the freezer. So Cook was going for, a dozen years before I arrived, so 27 years in total again, so that makes that growth story seem even longer in some respects. And these days we're now having started out, we're based in Kent, and we started out very much in the kind of the southeast corner with shops on local high streets, but these days we're nationwide. We've got 104, I think, as of a couple of weeks ago, because we're still opening shops, so 104 shops of our own, as far north as kind of Glasgow and Edinburgh, down in the west in Taunton and Cardiff. So we're kind of getting the national coverage, I guess. And then as well as our own shops, we also do branded freezer concessions in, about 1,200 partner retailers now. And that's everything from, if you like, the little village shop to the farm shop, garden centres, co-ops we're in increasingly, but not in any of the big supermarkets. And again, from a kind of business and brand perspective, that has probably been one of the kind of pivotal, I guess, decisions that were made before my time, but that has definitely influenced how the business has grown and how the brand has evolved as well.
I think, yeah, we had a few people talked about the influence of the big multiple supermarkets, and their fear was always that you start to lose control of your brand, and they start to dictate both potentially quality and range, and you're like, no, we know what we're doing. Look at that, 104 shops. It's just an incredible footprint.
Yeah. It is.
Like you say, it's just gradually grown and grown and grown, and suddenly there you are in three figures and all of those outlets, so that people can then, because we found you down in Polseth in Cornwall.
Right, okay, yeah.
So I was like, because we've got a shop in Harrogate. Oh, look, brilliant. We don't have to cook tonight.
Yeah.
But it's got you that look. It's the brand, and obviously this will be something we'll dig into with your role. The brand has become synonymous with quality and with home and with all the bits that actually people are really starting to yearn for and hanker for, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think that's been there the whole way through, and the very kind of origin of Cook is genuine in home cooking. So Ed and his sister Rosie are now co-CEOs of the business, and we are still a kind of majority family-owned company. But the roots of it were in their experience as kind of kids of the 70s and 80s, in a big family, kind of 4 kids, and then mum would cook for the freezer. And so at the weekend she would do a big batch of chili. Yeah. Do batch cooking, which became all the rage in lockdown. But so she'd do a batch of chili, she'd freeze it in ice cream tubs, pop it in the freezer, and then when they came home on a school night, it wasn't hours to get dinner on the table. It was straight out the freezer into the oven, and that was genuinely.
So that was the driver for Ed, and it was Dale, wasn't it? That set
That's right. Yeah. So the kind of that happened to kind of, I guess, coincide neatly with the fact that Ed and Rosie's parents then went and started a bakery. They owned some cafes and they started a bakery, and that bakery operated on a frozen basis. So again, so it was food service supplying other cafes, but frozen cakes, because cakes freeze really well. So most of the kind of cakes you'll get in any of the kind of high street chains will have been frozen, because that's clearly the most efficient way to do it. So they had that side of things, and then Ed had that idea still in his mind that, look, this works so well for cakes, and I know my mum made amazing frozen meals, so why isn't anybody doing frozen meals that are kind of homemade. And Dale was one of his customers. So Dale worked at a kind of a local event place here in Kent and was the head chef there. And so he was one of Ed's customers for the cakes, because Ed was selling salesman for the parents' bakeries, and they just used to get chatting. And so, yeah, he eventually got, about 20 grand together, said to Dale, "Look, do you want to come and do the cooking?" And kind of off they went.
Wow. So that's again, that's the opportunity moment, isn't it? That's whether it's the sliding doors or whether it's just something, just grab it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And Dale. So Dale's retired now, but he always says, when he started the business, his dream, he thought, right, we are going to be so successful when we get to 4 shops. That was like his vision of what success looked like.
Which is pretty impressive, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Managing 4 sites is not easy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Whereas Ed was always slightly more ambitious, I think. But it's just funny that Dale has had that kind of view of the world. But so Dale very much took the kitchens and the food side of things, and Ed managed kind of the shop. A little shop in Farnham was all we had. Then we had one in Tunbridge Wells. Then Sevenoaks was almost, I think, that was the point at which it felt like Cook would work, because we opened. Sevenoaks is quite an affluent town. I don't know if you know it, but it's quite kind of the busy kind of classic market town, commuter town, quite a lot of wealth. And we opened there, and we actually took, I can't remember what the number was, I think it was 5 grand in a week. And it was like, that was such a step up from what we'd ever done before.
We found it, we've done it.
Yeah, exactly. And like 20 years later, maybe we finally cracked it, but we definitely haven't cracked it yet. And I think that's one of the, the abiding joys of being a business, is you've never cracked it. And there's always a new challenge. There's always a new problem. There's always a new opportunity. And so keeping alive to that, and keeping enthusiastic about it, I guess, and energized by that, is really what it's all about.
Yeah, keeping that energy. So what's the senior team made up of now? In terms of, you obviously got yourself. Are Ed and Rosie still on the board? Are they still active in the business?
Okay, yeah. So Ed and Rosie are kind of co-CEOs together. So that's a quite unusual setup, having 2 CEOs, but it works really well. Then obviously you've got me. We've got Chief Commercial Officer, who joined us actually fairly recently from Leon, the restaurant chain where she was MD. We've got somebody who heads up operations. Got a Chief Sales Officer. Somebody heads up people, somebody heads up technical, and kind of, which covers for us obviously the technical side of food, all that side of things, but also a lot of sustainability side of things. And who else? How am I doing on my list? I've probably forgotten somebody.
We're 11 in total. I think nine with.
Well, I definitely have forgotten somebody. Oh, we've got a head of retail on there. Who else do we have?
I hope so, with that footprint.
Yeah. Anyway, that just about covers it.
It's a big team. And then how do they work? Do you meet on a regular basis? Because it's always quite interesting as businesses grow. And obviously, Ed and I assume Rosie have been in for a long time, and you too. You got to be challenged by new people coming in a positive way, haven't you? That things can be done differently.
Yeah, and it is really, I mean, I would say that, that strategic leadership team has been one of the big strengths of Cook, certainly since I've been here. And it has evolved, and it's changed, but slowly. So there's never been a really, if you like, a rapid turnover of people. It's felt quite organic, and it's felt quite natural. I think we would say the strength of relationship and trust around that table is absolutely essential for then the strength of relationship and trust throughout the business.
Yeah.
Because again, a business like ours, which is unusual because it's what we call vertically integrated. So we do everything. So we've got big kitchens down here in Kent where we employ kind of 800 people now in 3 different sites cooking. So we've got all the food being made here.
You were pleased with the budget last week.
Don't start.
No, we're not going to get political on this.
Yeah, let's not go there. So we got those people all cooking here. Then we kind of own our own logistics as well. So we're trucking all our food around the country and storing it ourselves. We clearly have got our own retail footprint as well. So all the people work in the shops, and then all those central functions, be it marketing, be it people team, be it finance. So it's quite unusual to actually own the full piece. Usually brands will be outsourcing manufacturing and not doing retail, and they'll be going through a supermarket. So So it's a really interesting mix of people, mix of skills. It requires a huge amount of investment to keep it all going, which is just a fact of life. But the joy of it, I always say, is like literally under our roof, you've got the whole spectrum of kind of humanity, because we do everything from classic, if you like, blue collar manufacturing jobs up to all the office based stuff. And so having a culture and a business and a brand that actually brings those people together, that feels like they're connected and part of the same thing, is both a challenge but is hugely rewarding, because if anything, it makes you a bit optimistic about society and humanity. Because if we can do it under our roof at Cook, well, why then can't we do it under the bigger umbrella of society as a whole?
Yeah, it will be good to dig into that a bit, because obviously reading the site and reading lots of different bits from press and things about you guys, and I know it's a cliche that a lot of businesses will say, but people seems to be a massively driving factor in how you look after your teams. Can you, I mean, and one of my questions is like, how do you do that when you've got 104 sites yourself? And or like you say, I didn't even realize you had 800 people working in the massive amount of people to, and like to your point too, different types of roles and skill sets. So how do you knit a culture together that works for all of them?
I think with a lot of intentional effort, and there's just no getting away from the fact that you've got to put the work in, and you've got to really value culture and see it as an advantage for your business, not as a nice to have, but
Not as a box to tick, but as
an essential part of what you do. And offer, Ed often says, look, at the end of the day, we make lasagna. Now, the recipe for lasagna is no secret. Anybody can go and make lasagna. But what is different, what, if you like, the secret ingredient of we do is the people who we trust to make it are doing it in with the full commitment, with their full heart and soul, and are doing it just to a really great level in terms of quality. And then the people we're trusting to sell it to a customer are doing their job with kind of their full heart and soul, and wanting to give a customer a great experience. And that ultimately is what comes from culture. I think that my favorite, if you like, definition of culture is the set of behaviors and beliefs that enable a group to survive or thrive. And obviously we're in the thriving realm of that.
yeah.
But it is all back to, what are the behaviors and beliefs for you as a group of people? Because all a business is ultimately, at the end of the day, is a bunch of people coming together to do something together that they couldn't do individually. That's all it is. It's just people getting together to do stuff. And so the way in which you connect those people, the way in which you enable them to build strong relationships, to trust each other, to turn up, feel like they've had a fulfilling and rewarding day, that they've enjoyed themselves, that they've got rewarded fairly, that they've done something that has a positive kind of impact on perhaps the wider world or the community they're in. That's how you make work that's rewarding. That's how you build businesses that flourish, and how you give people just a sense of fulfillment. So for us, it's just that basic belief almost in, look, we've come together to do this thing. Let's make sure we have fun when we do it. Let's make sure we really bring our best. We play to strengths, and together, we can genuinely grow something we're really proud of, but also really grow ourselves and feel like we're moving forward in life. So for us, like, culture is just this engine that makes everything else work.
Yeah.
It is just fundamental.
It sounds like when you've got a multi-site business like yourself, even though you've got a big sort of HQ and manufacturing base, it sounds like it is that glue that's keeping everybody aligned, isn't it, and together and behind the business.
Yeah, and there's no doubt it gets much harder as you grow, and much harder as you do, as you say, have different sites. And certainly for us, moving from, if you like, we had pre-pandemic, we had one kitchen here in Sittingbourne, so one kitchen in Kent, and a puddings kitchen that's down in Somerset. So those are our two kitchens. And then we were kind of building up our third kitchen here in Kent, which opened literally just as the pandemic hit. Without it, we would have just run out of food literally overnight.
First you probably panicked, then you thought, brilliant.
But opening two sites here in Sittingbourne was, the pandemic was on, which obviously complicated things a lot. But still, recognizing the challenges of having two kind of manufacturing sites and and how you operate that was significant, was a definite learning for us, how to do that. And then we've now on 3 different sites. And again, I think culture ultimately isn't a blanket. It's not a one size fits all kind of
Flexes, doesn't
solution.
it, relative to where
Absolutely.
you
You
are
have
and what
to
you do.
accept that in different places, it means different things to different teams and different functions. But what you're seeking across the piece are the threads that put it all together, are the things that anybody from Cook could turn up into a room with other people from and would share that commonality. And I think that is around those behaviors and beliefs. What is it that really connects us as people who work for Cook that we could turn up with and expect it of each other?
Yeah, I think
If that
it's
makes sense.
interesting in terms of some feedback of, as I say, there's a shop in Harrogate that I've used a few times, and it's interesting when you go in there. You've obviously, me with my business head, I was thinking, is this actually a franchise rather than just a shop? Because the people seem to care so much about, and when you ask, has this got this in it, or I'm looking for something for that, it's like they've made it in the back themselves. And that's, I can't give you a bigger compliment because it feels like there's just the only shops in Harrogate and that's the one. And that to me is,
That's lovely to hear. Yeah.
but isn't it interesting? Because that suddenly, because some people might think, oh, I'm not going to shop at a place with 100 shops. It's a big, nasty. It's not. It's a great, independent, fantastically successful business. That's interesting how that culture is manifesting itself, that people are caring about the product and about how they educate the customer what's good
Yeah,
and what's bad and
absolutely.
what's different.
And I think for us, definitely a pivotal moment was launching some values. We didn't have values till I want to say 2014 or 2015. So a long time into our life as a business. And company values are often treated a bit cynically, like,
Yeah, get them on the wall. We've done that. Yeah.
yeah. Completely. And I can see why. And yet done well, done with real integrity and real belief and again kind of lived every day, there is nothing more powerful than a set of values that genuinely are meaningful to people. So it's really interesting. It's one of those interesting things. If you ever turn up at a business and there's some visibility of values, it's always an interesting question to ask. Oh, that's interesting. What does that mean to you? And just to get a sense of how
If they
does that
just go,
show
I
up?
don't know, it's on the wall.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
Yeah.
what? Yeah. Oh, I never noticed that. So it's a really interesting barometer of a culture and a business, whether people genuinely do know what the values mean and how they affect them in their day-to-day work. And I would say one of the things that keeps that alive, we do regular recognition, what we call recognition, every quarter. So just for everybody across the company, recognize anybody else for living up to one of our
You put
values.
a post, didn't you, this week on LinkedIn? So about that, about recognizing how you appreciate people you
That was
work.
appreciation. Yeah. That was,
Appreciation.
yeah.
Is that different?
Slightly different, I would say. So the recognition one is very intentionally about, if you like, values and behavior
Okay.
and
Yeah.
empowering everybody to do it. So it's not just, the
Yes.
boss's job or the manager's job. It's actually within everybody's remit to call out somebody for really doing a great job in accordance with one of our values. So that's just a kind of a way we seek to just make values real to people, I guess. And then the appreciation side of things, which is subtly different, I guess, is just the idea that actually, everybody loves being appreciated, being appreciated, being really told, I appreciate this bit of work you did, or how you responded to that, or whatever. And yet it's something that we find so little time to do in work, and I don't know about you, you can tell me how it is in your place, but there's often just in the day to day, everybody's busy, everybody's doing their thing, very little time made to actually step back and give some genuine heartfelt appreciation for colleagues.
It's all the same.
And
We're all
so
running.
it's, yeah,
Sorry, you go.
no, yeah, no, absolutely. And so I think it's just finding some space for that and inviting people to do it. And I think the exercise I was speaking about on LinkedIn was a very simple one. It's just like you get in a group with your team and you just have a pack of Post-its each, and you say, right, so next half hour, we'll just in silence, just let's look around the room and just write down 3 things you appreciate about everybody in the team or in the group, however it is, make it as heartfelt as you possibly can. And so people get right in, there's half an hour of silence. And then after that, it's just sharing those. And the way we tend to do it is we'll just go around the table. So we'd do Steve first. And so everybody would look at their post-its and they'd say, Steve, I really appreciate you for X, Y, and Z. And then they give you, and then they give you the post-it. And your response is just, you're not really allowed to respond other than just say thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
And you end up with a lovely little stack.
Hopefully, thank you.
No, it's all appreciation.
It's very nice.
Yes, absolutely. But it is so what's surprising is how powerful it is in some respects. And you almost reflect and you think, well, that's because that just never happens in any realm of life. Do you sit there and just
no, you don't.
Get
we don't stop and celebrate, do you? We win
by other people,
and then we're on to the next thing.
Absolutely.
It's just and you're right. It's a big
and
thing.
there's always stuff that comes up that is like, oh, I never knew. I never knew you felt like that about me. And if there's not a few tears, you probably haven't done it right. Is what I will say. But it's just such a simple but powerful tool to connect people. Again, it's back to that whole thing. It's just about connecting people, making people feel part of something, making them feel they've got this really strong relationship, and that's what drives them to do a great job. Is that sense of togetherness, that sense of relationship and team. That's when you get really powerful output and great business results. Which isn't a cynical way. That's not kind of, it's a virtuous circle. It's not a kind of cynical trick. It's the sense of, look, this is genuinely a thing. If we can thrive here as people, we're going to thrive as a business.
I think that's it. You should never apologize, but I think where you go wrong is where you start with the money and then try and manufacture something to make it, rather than if you create a business that's built on something and a passion, it will be successful and the money follows that way. I think as soon as you get the other way around, that's where you actually don't enjoy what you do. And those organisations that are purely financially driven. And look, good luck to them, but it's just not something that I think most of us want to be involved with. We want to feel we're part of something quite exciting. And it's a byproduct, not the driver. It's a big thing of mine. It's a big drum I try to beat.
Yeah.
So in terms of then, with your role in terms of the Chief Creative Officer, are you trying to, whenever you are doing, it's interesting, isn't it? You've got this wonderful advertising footprint of 100 shops, which is great. We've had one of the previous guests they didn't run Maplin. They bought Maplin Electronics when it went bust, and they bought the brand to create it. Fascinating story about they realised the power of this brand. But he said the biggest thing, obviously, we lost from day one. They had 175 stores, and he said it was just free advertising because every high street had a Maplin. So you just, as soon as you did an ad online, they went, oh yeah, I've seen that. So you've got this wonderful thing of the footprint, and do you try and bring that brand culture alive in everything that you're doing creatively? Do you try and make sure that the brand reflects that?
We certainly try. How successful we are. And sometimes I'm not altogether sure, but I definitely think I hate the word authenticity, but I can't think of a better one right now. But
yes, okay.
But you do want that sense in which I always say, like, you want to be able to scratch the surface, and when you get below, be surprised it goes so deep almost, and then to scratch it and it goes deeper and deeper. And I think clearly there's so many brands out there that are literally just surface brands, and you scratch it off the top. There's not a lot.
Line, and it's nothing.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've never wanted to be one of those. I've always wanted to be a brand with real depth. And sometimes, I would, passing a bit of judgment on myself. Sometimes maybe that means we're a bit humble or reticent about maybe shouting about some stuff we do.
You also think about your audience and your locations.
Yeah,
it's where you don't have to be brash. It's where people will respect quality, isn't it? It's quite an interesting one.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the shops, again, I would say we don't always make the best use of them, as you say, as an advertising hoarding, because that's what it kind of is. It's you're paying your rent for an advertising hoarding on the high street in some respects. And I think there are definitely ways in which we could use that more effectively. And at the same time, I think the experience of going into the shop then is that, again, we're back to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for years we've talked about Cook as a people brand, back to the ethos of the business around kind of relationships. but the idea that actually our brand comes to life through people, and that's through the people who cook, because it is people in the kitchen. It's not a massive factory. We never say factory, we always say kitchen. It's people in
It's
there doing the
interesting, yeah, the
cooking.
language, yeah.
It's we have the chef's name on every meal, so you can see who cooked it. And then obviously in the shop, you're meeting a person, you're getting the human connection, and it's all about that to really bring the brand to life and the power for it. And a little bit, I'm so glad you said about your experience in Harrogate. That's what happens, because it is, the Maya Angelou quote is one of our favorites, that people forget what you said, people forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that sense of, if we can make people feel great for shopping with us through a human interaction, that's going to make the food taste that little bit better when they take it home, and it's going to bring them back next time.
Because somebody recommended it, gave you a tip. It's fab, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's wonderful that you've got control of that. And then it goes back to that earlier point of why you would keep away from the big malls, because you could probably retire in a few years if you did that, but it wouldn't be the same business, and you would all feel a little, I think, soulless. Not having to go at them, but it's just a different world, isn't it?
No, it is a different world. It's interesting that then we kind of tried to bridge that with our concessions again, which is just an interesting business approach that, in a way, I think we've created almost a little bit of an opportunity that other people are seeing now as well, that actually you don't have to be either a supermarket, the big 6 supermarkets at one end, or own your own shop at the other, or be a direct-to-consumer digital business. There are actually some great independent retail outlets, and a surprising number, that mean you can reach customers in a slightly different way that gives you more control of the relationship. Again, it's still a relationship business, and knowing the people who stock our food, knowing the people who are responsible for our freezers, because again, our trust then is that they're going to look after that area of their shop
in the
really
same
well.
way as
Absolutely.
the shop,
Yeah.
But it's interesting from the shop's point of view, isn't it? Because anybody who's one of your customers rocks up on holiday somewhere in the UK and they see that freezer, it's a classic use of a brand, isn't it? Which is, a brand is a mark of quality and a mark of recognition, where they go, there's good food in there, we can have that tonight for our supper.
Yeah.
And so it's actually a way of, why would you go in that shop? Well, it's for cook.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting thing.
I'm loving you've said that, yeah. Because again, that's kind of what we've always said to our concessions, that this is about bringing people to you. That genuinely, it makes you a destination for people in a way you wouldn't have been otherwise. And so getting our little kind of A boards outside is a great way of just, again, raising brand awareness, but also flagging that shop must be good enough to stock cook.
Yeah, there's the quality going on in there that's wider than cook, but at least I've got a few bits for my supper tonight, and I can get the rest with it. Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that. I think it's interesting, isn't it, how it evolves and what opportunities it presents. So in terms of the business as well, and you were reading, you've told me the numbers, but there's obviously, the business was started with a purpose that was about that recreation of those halcyon days at home, that they were going back, but also in terms of doing good with people. But you were pretty early on with the B-Corp journey, sort of like, as I said to you earlier today, before it was sort of cool and famous, nearly.
Yeah. So we were, I think, the 4th B-Corp in the UK, and for a long time we were by far the biggest. And for us, I mean, the way I often talk about it is Cook was started as a business with a good heart. So we were always a good-hearted business, but we didn't necessarily know what that meant in the wider world. And we came across B Corp in about 2010, when it was just getting going in the States. And Ed and Rosie's brother, James, is very big kind of in the business and purpose space. And so he'd been to a conference in the States and came back and said, oh, there's this thing called B Corp, and it's actually it's actually a kind of framework. It's a measure. Yeah. I think it's kind of what we've been looking for. And we were all a bit, genuinely, I can remember it. We were all a bit, it's an American thing. Those Californians. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. But we'd had a look at it, and then we met the founders. They came over. We met the founders. They were lovely people, as you'd expect. And we kind of did the certification, figured out we were kind of, pretty close to being able to qualify for certification. So maybe we should actually take a proper look. And so we kind of asked if we could go out to their annual conference, which was called the B-Corp's Champion Retreat, which was in Boulder, Colorado. And that must have been in 2012. Because we said, look, until we go out and see these people, we don't know if they're our kind of people.
Is this a bit of smoke and mirrors? Is it? Yeah.
Absolutely. Or is it just this woo-woo hippie California shit? And they're all going to be hugging. They're all going to be hugging us
before you know it.
Around. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a few of us went out there, and I've still got the little scrap of paper somewhere, because on the plane going over, I think 4 of us went, and we said, look, what do you think the odds are that we're going to come away from this and do it? And I think there were 5 of us. Across the 5 of us, I think we were about on. Basically, we thought it's just all a bit, it's going to be a bit American and wanky. Yeah, exactly. We're going to kind of look at it with our kind of cynical British eyes and go, yeah, no, not for us. And then genuinely, we got there and we turned up in this kind of classic conference setup. Turned up in the room, and I mean, as you know, when you go to most conferences, actually, you're a bit of a different. You're a sales guy, so you probably love conferences. But most of us don't necessarily love conferences. Yeah, we walk in the room and you're looking around, trying to avoid 80% of the people to find like the 3 or 4 people you actually want to talk to in the room. But this was just, again, it's that alignment of values and beliefs. And you walked in the room and you just felt you were there with everybody already. You didn't have to have some bullshit conversation about something. Absolutely. And so that night, kind of, I remember we had a beer and everybody was on like, we're in.
We're flipping. Yeah, we've gone the other way.
Yeah, exactly. So we were completely sold. It's been a great thing for us at Cook. We've grown with that over now 10, 11. Our next certification, we're just waiting to hear, but is due imminently. And, we came back again and with a desire to bring it to the UK and to say, look, this is a great thing. It gives a framework for business that just hasn't been there before. That means all the kind of, for want of a better word, fluffy stuff that people talk about suddenly becomes much harder and much more measurable and much more meaningful. And I would say it's kind of the journey from moving from a business with a good heart to a business that actually has an impact. And again, purpose is one of those words that's probably been overused now. And I would definitely say now it's moving from purpose to impact, because purpose can just sound nice. Purpose can sound great.
Make the noises, but
absolutely, yeah. Whereas actually, what anybody should be asking or looking for in a business, whether they're joining it to work or looking to it as a customer, is actually, what's your impact here? Show me your impact measures, your impact report.
And I think
prove to me you're making a difference.
Yeah, and I think as Gen Z, as we like to call them now, as they come through and they start to influence the next level of employment and then spending power too, which will be the key.
Yeah.
We will see that more and more. Because I think there was the generation before them talked, was it a bit purpose sums them up. I don't mean that in a rude way, but they had the right idea, but they didn't know how to do it. Whereas this next generation coming through will go, well, no, I won't shop there, or will shop there, and and when they've got the pound notes to spend, they'll make a difference.
And I definitely, so like we said, our kids are going out into the workplace, and what I would hope they're going to do, and I know this is tough, but what I would hope they're going to do is really think about where they want to work, and it's a tough value exchange, because you feel completely without power often, in terms of you're the person trying to get a job. The employer holds all the cards. But being really, really tough on employers and saying, look, if I'm going to give you my 8 hours a day, of my one repeatable life, then I need you to be giving me something that is going to fulfill me, that is going to energize me, that is going to make me feel like I'm doing something good in the world. And if you can't, I'm going to go somewhere else, because you know what? In my one unrepeatable life, that's all I've got. That's the only thing I've got, is my time and my skills and my enthusiasm and my energy. And I want to give it where it's going to make a difference. So being tough on employers, I think, is a good thing.
Exactly, and just force people to change. That's the only way it'll happen. It's a bit like the whole environmental thing now, isn't it? Until people actually start changing behaviours. They won't change.
Yeah.
Lovely segue into, tell me a bit about raw talent, because that's talking of impact.
Yeah, raw talent is probably the thing I would say collectively we're proudest of. And Raw Talent is basically a program that breaks down barriers to employment. So that might be a prison sentence, it might be homelessness, it might be a history of addiction, it might be mental ill health. All those are big barriers to getting a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Purely because employers won't look at you and equally won't give you the support you need to get back on your feet. So there are barriers there, but also at the same time, we know that often a job is the key to unlocking the potential in that individual and kind of bringing them back from the fringes of society, if you like, into the mainstream. And so what Raw Talent does, it just seeks to give people that support that are coming either out of prison or from homelessness or whatever it is, to get them a good, solid job here at Cook that pays them well, that gives them the support they need, and that gets them back on their feet. And so we've been doing it. Gosh, we had our 10th anniversary of Raw Talent a couple of months ago, and in that time, I mean, we've now provided getting on for 250 jobs, and the stories of just transformation are always just like they're tearjerkers, and they're moving, and they make you both incredibly grateful for kind of what you've got and also really aware of the battles that some other people are fighting and the real uphill battle they're often fighting when it comes to getting a job.
Yeah, that you're not always aware of on the outside. Yeah,
absolutely. So it's, it's a great thing, of which I have to say I have very little to do with it directly other than bask in the reflected glory, but it's a great program. And it's really encouraging to see more businesses kind of starting to think about that type of program as well.
Yeah, one of the previous guests has opened a restaurant in London that's basically exactly the same on homelessness and
great,
affected by that, where they're training front and back of house people to get into that industry, the hospitality industry. I'll send you the details because it's very interesting. They've got some amazing write-ups because they've got a quality product as well.
Yeah.
And it just proves you can do things right. I suppose, Timpson's have been doing it for years, but
absolutely
never really spoke about it. And then you find out the story behind it. It's like, that's incredible.
Yeah, and again, we've done a lot of work with Timpson's and with Greg's, kind of getting together, doing events to kind of encourage other businesses to do similar things.
Brilliant. All right.
So again, that sense of community and businesses working together to make change.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, I've realised we're coming to the end of our time. Quick thing, how's the future looking then, do you think? What can you see in the pipeline with Cook?
Well, so next year, notwithstanding a national insurance challenge to pay for, we've got some more shops to open. So we see a lot of opportunities still to add stores in the UK. We're trying some interesting things out, like vending. We've always got interesting brand things to do in terms of just kind of updating what we do, taking a look at how could we rethink a shop a bit to be slightly different, slightly more engaging maybe. So looking at our shop estates again, and then here, we've got these big kitchens, and a lot of it is, as we grow, how do we just get better at what we do? How do we get more efficient at cooking? How do we keep going? So this year we always have a kind of cultural theme for the year, and this year it's been kind of raising our game has been our theme, with that whole idea of incremental gains and 1% better a day, adding up to 3,800% better a year. So thinking about just the little things you can do a bit better every day to deliver a big result.
Brilliant. I love it. I love it that, like you say, the way the business has got to with that level of turnover and that level of the team, that you're still looking to drive, but it's the only way it works, isn't it? Because as soon as you relax, you just go backwards, aren't you?
Yeah, it's like those people who retire and then drop dead of a heart attack, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah,
keep going.
Exactly. Yeah.
So go on, a moment of personal reflection, and we can pretend either we're speaking to our children or you're talking to young James who's come out of uni. Is there a piece of advice or a bit of lesson you'd want to give them that would help them along their way?
Ooh. I think it's just try stuff. Don't be scared of what might happen.
Yeah.
And particularly when you're in your 20s, that is the time to just give everything a go. Give it a try. You don't have to have the qualifications, you don't have to have the experience, you don't have to have whatever you might think you need to have. Give it a go, commit to it fully. What's the worst that can happen? And really just, I've been hugely fortunate.
Try and experiment just to find out what is and also what isn't right for
Absolutely,
you.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, completely. Find your thing. There will be it's like that classic. There's a hole out there somewhere that is just the right shape for you, and you've got to try a few different holes before you find it for sure. But when you find it, that will be the moment that just kind of unlocks the real you. So keep looking. Don't settle for stuff. Yeah.
I think that's great. I think that's great. Well, look, James, that's been so interesting. Thank you for giving us the time this afternoon. I've really enjoyed meeting you. And best of luck in your challenge for next year and the year after and the year after.
Cheers, Steve.
Thanks,
Hugely
James.
enjoyable. Yeah. Thanks a lot.